The Amazon Handmade application doesn't need to be difficult. I was approved and started making thousands within weeks. Here's how I was able to get approved so fast. There are 6 sections to the Amazon Handmade application, so we'll walk through each section and we'll talk about what you need to know. So one thing you want to keep in mind when filling out the Amazon Handmade application is before you can actually start the application process, you will need to have an Amazon professional sellers account. You can go to sell.amazon.com, I think is the address, and you can sign up to be a professional seller. It is $39.99 a month, but once you become an Amazon Handmade seller and you get approved, that fee is waived. So you really should only have to pay that fee once. And for a while there, they were actually refunding the first month. So I don't know if that's the case, if they still do that, but know that when you sell on Amazon Handmade, you have that $40 fee waived, and you only have to have one listing in your shop to be considered an Amazon Handmade seller. You can still convert back to the other categories and list in the regular Amazon marketplace, but you have to have one in your shop that's a handmade item to stay as a handmade seller and not have that fee every month. So section number 1, and this is the most important, is you need to be an actual handmade seller. You can have a single person operation or you can have employees, but you need to be hand making your products. This doesn't mean that you can't use machines to help you, but you or your team has to do the majority of the work. One of the bullet points for eligibility directly from Amazon themselves: production methods using hand tools or light machinery are allowed if they're used by an individual in their home, studio, or workspace. However, mass production using assembly lines or automation technology is not allowed. Amazon doesn't do this application to be difficult. All they're doing is trying to protect our space and make sure that everyone that appears in the handmade section are truly handmade sellers. So section number 2 is all about your work. This is your chance to tell Amazon about your products and your process. So a little bit about the type of products that you can sell in Amazon Handmade directly from Amazon themselves. They can be hand altered or pre-made items. That's acceptable. For example, an application of your own design on drinkware or tea towels. Upcycling or taking a used item and improving its value through refinement or upgrade is allowed. For example, this would be painting or refinishing a table. So repurposing, you can take an item or its component parts or pieces and you can repurpose them into a totally different item. So for example, you can create a bowl out of a vinyl record, or you can make pillow covers out of vintage rugs. These are just some of the examples that Amazon provides in the application. So altered mass-produced items like adding a monogram to a coffee mug may or may not be approved. If it's not approved, there's an option called Amazon Custom, and that's a totally different application process that we're not going to cover here. So that may be an option for you as a seller. Items that has more hand making, and use that for your application, and then you can choose to still list some of your other items. Just make sure that you're still listing items that would be classified as handmade, and you're not, say, ordering an item from China that you're getting manufactured for you and then trying to list it in handmade. If they find you doing that, they will remove you from the sellers and you will not be allowed to come back. So section number 3 is more about your products. So this section is actually text boxes, and it's the best chance you have to explain your products and process to the Amazon Handmade team. So let's talk about the questions in this section. So question number 1, what raw materials are involved in the creation of your products? So this would be any of your tools that you use. If you're using vinyl, you could list the vinyl, the silhouette machine, the weeding. All of that stuff is going to be hand done, so you can list all of those different steps and different tools. Now, one thing to keep in mind is all of these text box sections with all of these questions is limited to 500 characters. So you want to be short and sweet. You don't want to add a lot of fluff They're trying to get a true picture of what you actually do to hand make your products and why you should be approved. What tools or techniques do you use? So when I initially started, I was making cards and they were made out of paper and they were layered. So I put that I was using my silhouettes and having those help me cut out the pieces of paper. But then my process was putting together the cards by hand. So glue and maybe tweezers and some other items to get those put together the way that I wanted them to be. And you can also list all of the papers or velvet paper or vinyl or die cuts that were already made or dies that you use to cut the shapes. Whatever you use to make your products, you want to make sure that you list those different things. Now, obviously for different handmade items, it's going to be different in the tools that you use. Kind of pick one product and use that as your basis to think about which tools and techniques you're going to use and to base your Amazon handmade application on. So the third question, from start to finish, how long does it physically take to craft one product? So again, keep one product in mind. You can use the same product that you use throughout the whole application. I would stick to one and make sure you're truthful. If it takes you an hour to make it, tell them it takes you an hour to make it. Or tell them that there's all these steps that you need to do to lead up, and then it has to, like I know with epoxy and resins, they have to sit. If they need to sit for 30 minutes, I would just say that you need to do all these stuff to prep, and then once you put the epoxy on, then it has to sit for 30 minutes, and then you may have to come back and do more. I know a lot of times you have to do epoxy and resin, you have to sand it, and then you have to do something else. So be truthful in how long it really takes to make your products. The fourth and final question is, are there any additional details that you would like the team to know when they're reviewing your application? This is an optional box, but if you have more that you need to say about your process or your products, this is a chance to have an additional 500 characters to continue any thoughts or drop to the next box. I know when I did mine, and if I had more below, I would just say, see last box or something, so that they know that that's where that thought is continued if you need the extra space. But like I said, keep these short and sweet. You don't want to provide a bunch of fluff to like make it sound better, because this is strictly just to get you in the platform. Once you're there, then you can add the fluff to your products if you want to, and to describe them to your customers. They're just trying to make this process easy, not be difficult. So section number 4. Photos. In this section, you get 3 spaces to include photos for your products and process. This is a chance to show off your products. They don't need to be final edited photos. Actually, in fact, you'd be better off using work in process photos and something that's showing your hands, so you can always set up you can use your phone for this. You don't need a special fancy camera. What I did was just took my phone and took different shots. When I did it, there was a lot more photos and they wanted to see your workspace. You can include your workspace if you want to, but you don't have to anymore. And I think that was because a lot of people sell out of their home, which is what I do. And they were, privacy kind of stuff. I think some people had issue with showing pictures of their house and how it was set up, but you don't have to include those. They actually reduced the number down. I think when I did it, it was like 9 photos. It's down to 3. They really just want to see your products and see you making the products. They do recommend including something with your business name on it in the actual photos. So that can just be a business card if you have one. I mean, to be honest, you could just print out a piece of, print some business cards off the computer, just put it on copy paper and cut them up and use them in your photo. They just want something with your business name on the photo. And please don't include any products that are in direct violation of copyright or trademark infringement. You can't sell items that are trademark or copyright infringement on the Amazon marketplace. So be sure that if you're gonna show something that has Disney or a sports team, that you actually have the license to be able to sell those. Those are gonna be a huge red flag for Amazon. And to be honest, one of my listings got taken down just because I used a word in my keywords and listing, and it was caught by the listing review bot, and it was taken down, but I had it back up pretty quickly. Just make sure that you don't include anything that would be in direct violation when you do your application. That would be a huge red flag. So section number 5, and this one is your product category. So there's about 20 to so categories available in the Amazon Handmade space. You can't sell every category in Amazon Handmade. Like you can't sell electronics or something like that. So choosing this is really just to give Amazon an idea of the type of products you're going to sell. I would say whatever product you've been using for your application, you can choose where that would fall, or choose your best seller to fill out the application. It's really up to you what you want to put. This doesn't limit you when you jump into the Seller Central space to start listing your items. You'll still have access to all the categories. This doesn't limit you to one spot. So I will throw a list of categories up here on the screen so that you can see the categories that are available to see if you fit. If your product doesn't fit in one of these categories, I would maybe rethink about what you want to sell, because you only need one listing in Amazon Handmade to remain a handmade seller. You can still list on the regular Amazon marketplace, but it's really helpful to be a handmade seller. They did hint recently in a training with Amazon Handmade sellers that they're working on getting digital products into the Amazon space. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if that's going to be you create a digital product and you send the buyer a PDF. I highly doubt that. Or if it's going to be you create a digital thing and it gets printed with another company like Printful or something like that. I'm not real sure what they're planning on doing with that, but they did hint that digital items would be coming. It's not currently an item that's available in the handmade space. The only way you can get a digital item is like a Kindle book, and that's not considered handmade. So section 6 is the final section. This section is really just for additional information for the team, for them to review your application. So this is a place to include any social channels you have. If you have an Etsy storefront, if you have your own website, you can include those as well. This is just a way for Amazon to get to know your brand better. They're not trying to keep you out of the Amazon handmade space. They really do want to have more handmade sellers. It's just a way for them to get to know you a little better and see that you are actually a true business and you're not like, I don't know how many applications they get a day, but I'm sure they get some that are very much not handmade sellers and they have to reject those. So just make sure that you can include any other information that you want to include. So there are 2 optional things. Well, one's not really optional, but there is one that says optional down in this last section. They want to know if you want to know about FBA, which is prime shipping. You can answer this yes or no. It really doesn't affect your application at all. It's just if you check yes, they'll send you some more information on how to become an FBA seller. And we're going to talk about that more later here on the channel. But it is good to get some information from them about FBA because it is one of the things that kind of sets Amazon apart, and the handmade sellers do get access to that information. And then there's another box for how you heard about Amazon Handmade. This is truly optional. You don't have to answer it. You can just leave it blank. If you want to include that you heard about it from a friend or someone on YouTube or, an ad or something like that, then you can include that if you want. Whew. Okay, so there is one final box at the bottom now that you're done filling everything out. That is a checkbox to make sure that you agree to the Amazon Handmade guidelines. When you're filling it out, it is blue text so you can link to go read all the guidelines, but they just want to know that you agree to all the guidelines before you submit your application. That was a lot, but I have a checklist for you. You can grab this 3-step checklist at primefirstsuccess.co/checklist. And I will be sure to send that on over to you. It is also linked down in the description box below. Once you've got that checklist, be sure to watch my next video where I'm gonna walk you through your account setup after you're approved. That video will be right here on the screen once it's published next week, and I will see you in that video. Bye.